Welcome, everybody. And if you're just tuning in live, you're listening to 105.3 FM out of Mississippi and 107.7 FM out of the beautiful city of New Orleans, Louisiana, to UFO Paranormal and United Public Radio Network. And this is the Angel Rock. I am your host this evening. I was trying to think, what show am I on tonight? I have a guest. He's kind of my co-host, but he's my guest. But I am the host of this show, The Angel Rock. My name is Lorilei Potvin. Like I said, I also co-host Thursday nights, The Thing at the Foot of the Bed with David Hansel, and that's 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, the intro, I'm going to have to fix that one. I was fighting with it all day. I want to make it so it's full screen for you guys. I'll have to reformat it for you, but at least you got to see it. We indeed are having a Halloween party this Thursday night, David and I, on The Thing at the Foot of Bed at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But if you've never been here before, welcome. And also our returning people here, welcome. A little bit about myself. I'm a Canadian psychic medium, crystal Reiki energy healer, Akashic Records practitioner, spiritual teacher and mentor. I'm also a registered nurse, an animal communicator. I'm well-versed in near-death experiences, having had one myself as a toddler and studied them for over 40 years professionally and personally. And I'm extremely well versed in the paranormal. I always say we didn't go looking for it, it found us. And we've shared our story, or some of it anyways, on the Travel Channel's Paranormal Survivor Season 4, Episode 9, called Demonic Hauntings. I did not name it that, but that's what it's called. So welcome. Now, if you like what you see, and you guys over on TikTok, I'm working on a streaming key. I promise I am working on it. I think I got it figured out. It's coming soon. I promise. I keep saying that, but it is. But if you like what you see, please like, share, and subscribe, and tell all your friends and family. There really is something for everybody on this network. It's been around for 25 plus years, and we do stream to every country in the world. Believe it or not, we do. And yeah, so like, share, and subscribe. It's not just all UFO and paranormal stuff. That's why it's called UFO Paranormal and United Public Radio Network. So, and we're always adding new hosts. I believe we're almost up to 40 live hosts on the network now. So there really is many different shows. We do stream 7 days a week, multiple shows live. And when we're not streaming live, the archive server dips in and picks a random show for the last 25 plus years to play. So we really look like we're live all the time. We are, I guess, because we're streaming when we're not live. If you guys want to watch, if you guys want to watch us on TV, you can. The network has its own channel. How you can find that, you're going to go to, my mouth does not want to work tonight. You're going to go to Roku, and you're going to go into the channel store search button. You're going to type in UFO space P as in paranormal. There's a drop down list where about the third or fourth one down, you're looking for UFO space paranormal and United Public Radio. And that's how you can watch us. Now, if you've been to this show or The Thing at the Foot of the Bed, you know both shows are very audience participative. I always say, if you guys weren't here, I'd be having a wonderful conversation with my guest, but you guys add so much to the conversation, and I really appreciate all of you being here. And I mean that as well on TikTok. We've got Michelle Wilfong. I think she's over there. If she's not, she will be on TikTok, and she'll highlight if you guys have questions or comments. So I appreciate all you, but if 80% of our audience around the world is audio only, and you need to be watching us to be able to comment. So if you'd like to join the conversation, we'd love to have you join us. We are streaming to a new platform tonight. I'm going to try it. Fingers crossed it's streaming over there, and it's under a strange name. It used to be my old screen name. It's called Mystique 1508 on rumble.com. So if you are on Rumble and you're watching, please throw your comments up. We'd love to see them, and we can you could be part of the conversation. You can also join the conversation on TikTok. You can also do it on, I got to think now, because Facebook was not playing nice again this week. So I am streaming live on my own profile on Facebook under Lorilei Potvin. I am also streaming it to my YouTube channel, which is The Angel Rock with Lorilei Potvin. We are streaming to UFO Paranormal and United Public Radio Network Facebook. I'm going to try again. Supposedly it's a magic trick. I may be able to get to stream on Facebook. We'll see. Otherwise, just head over to the YouTube. that's the best place to be right now, or Rumble or somewhere else. They're playing nice this evening. So I want to introduce my guest as I'm rambling away here. Then he's so patiently sitting and waiting for me. Thank you, Dr. Frederick. So hang on, I'm going to read his bio for you. Give me a sec. I got so many notes here and running about 4 different devices as I'm doing this. So Dr. Frederick Woodard, and he's been in the chat quite a bit, you guys, all over on Instagram with many of the different shows. You usually hear me shouting him out. He's been on the Angel Rock before. He's a clinical psychologist and certified hypnotherapist, as well as an author of numerous books, who conducts original research on the supernatural, paranormal, hypnosis, and psychotherapy. His research stems from his dissatisfaction with general psychological explanations of hypnosis and altered states, which is not reflected his own personal and clinical experience. And we're going to continue also to chat about his latest book called Developing Your Supernatural Awareness. Welcome, Dr. Fred.
Thank you.
I'm glad to have you here.
I appreciate that.
Let me say hi to everybody. I always say hi to everybody and like to make them feel. I always hate when I go to a live show, and I understand if it's got like 3,000 people and the comments are flying by, but you go there and you maybe got a question or something, and nobody ever acknowledges anybody in the chat. And I think,
oh,
you could watch this anytime. So that's why I always like to involve people. So Z-Sun Dragon or Kevin says, happy Halloween, Lorilei. And Z-Sun Dragon says, love the intro. Yes, if you're just tuning in, David and I are hosting the network's UPRN Halloween party. It'll start at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Halloween night. I have to send out invites because we kind of decided this last week, and it got kind of crazy. So different hosts may be popping in. Michelle and Amelia with the Outer Realm will still be having their regular show at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but we've got permission. If people still want to hang out and have fun, we can go a little longer than our 2 hours that night. So for those of you asking for the shows, I know this one and David and I show to be longer, we can Thursday night. Hang on, we got Heidi Gall. She's saying hi. Everybody's saying hi and saying they love the intro and saying hi, Dr. Frederick. Michelle Wilfong. She says, hey, everyone. I'm driving but listening. Sorry, did I cut you off?
No.
Okay, good. We've got Richard
I
Minnick.
just said hi back.
Okay. Richard Minnick says, everyone, evening and hello. Nicole Thomas Ryan. Nicole, I hope your foot's feeling better. And Kathy Hanley Little says, good evening, Richard, Michelle, and Lorilei. And she also said, hello, Dr. Woodward. And then we've got Stone Hobbit over on TikTok. We've got Nanya. Thank you for the roses. And if you guys can, please, we got Bill Donnelly 00, just Shannon. I'm going to give a few of you a shout out. Roseanne, let's see, Blackander. So you guys, if you're just joining me on TikTok, I'm working on it, but you can't see the screen. So if you want, you can head over to YouTube over on either the Angel Rock with Lorilei Potvin or the UFO and Paranormal and United Public Radio Network. You can head over there and we'll see your comments. But I'm going to bounce back and forth between there and Instagram. Let me check Instagram. That's the fun of producing your own show. So I said to you while we were off air, we were just getting ready, I said, how have you been? I think it was March you were here.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, hi, Michelle Plummer. So I thought, this is a perfect time to have you back with your book. And as I was rereading your bio, I was thinking, I love the way it was written up because our friend Gavin, your publisher, shared it with me. But I was thinking, with your clinical experience, what have you experienced differently than what's presented, especially when it comes to the supernatural, for example?
Well, I don't know that it's that. The answer is that I think my clinical skills kind of trained me to see things better sometimes, not all the time and not with everybody, but better than the average person.
Okay. Can you elaborate? I know obviously you can't go in, especially with being a nurse myself. I mean, obviously
Can't talk about
confidentiality.
cases.
Yes, confidentiality. I was just going there. It's very important. But I guess generally, like, have you had supernatural experiences with cases in the way of hypnosis, or maybe tell me a little bit?
I've had cases where people have done things that were unusual, And for example, a little one was a girl and her mother came in, and I started talking about lions, and they looked at each other and they said, "We've been talking about lions for the last half an hour." And I said, "I didn't even know that." I said, "I had no way of knowing that. I guess I just responded to it." And
Mm-hmm.
things like that, you know.
Mm-hmm. Have you had any experiences? I don't think we've got much of a chance to talk about this, but when you've done hypnosis, have you experienced anything in the way of somebody sharing a past life or a regression of any kind, like going into something like that?
Yes, I have.
Hmm. How I found out about this was years ago when I was trying to find answers for a paranormal experience. And there was a dentist that used to use hypnosis as part of his practice. And he started experiencing some very strange things with his patients and eventually moved his practice away from dentistry into helping people with past life regressions and future life regressions. So what do you think people should know then? I'll leave it up to you because I know there was, let me go through my questionnaire here. I tried to memorize it, but I got too many things going on this evening. It sounds like we're on Rumble, you guys. I just got the heads up from our station manager, Michelle DeRoche. So thank you, Michelle. Let me go back here. I just saw it. Sorry about this, Dr. Frederick. I've got 20 million
It's
things
fine.
going on at once here. I know. Thank God you've been on this show before. So, okay. So let's ask this question then. What drew your interest in writing about supernatural experiences? And have you had any or paranormal experiences of your own? I know we talked a little bit about that the last time.
Yes, we did, and I had talked about the experience I had at the Concord State Library.
Hmm.
Um, I think with you guys about that.
Hmm. There's new people here though, but is that your only experience? Like what? Because not everybody that does the line of work that you do is
No, not
interested.
that wasn't my only experience. I remember one time I had a guy come in the morning, and he was transgendered. We would
Mhm,
dress like a woman sometimes, but he wouldn't do that in public.
mhm,
And during the day, I was thinking about him, and then I had this 12-year-old girl that came to see me, and she sat down and she looked at me and she said, "You got to stop thinking about men in dresses." And I looked at her and I thought, "Wait a minute. There's nothing in this room that would suggest that. Nothing."
mhm. So what do you think it was?
It was her being connected to me.
Okay, okay, 'cause, Stone Hobbit actually picked up on their frequency. Nice. And I've had this conversation many times with different people, and I always say, "I don't know everything," but I've often or I should say I believe in the universal consciousness. I think quantum physics is starting to prove it. Never mind that I just believe everybody has this ability, but the thing is, I don't think we've ever been taught that it's possible, right? Like when we grow up, like as little kids, most of us haven't. And I think once upon a time ago, we probably didn't even speak. I think we were able to use telepathy. And I think everybody has some kind of intuitive ability. Love to hear your thoughts.
Yes, I agree that most people do, but whether they're aware of it or not, or whether they can notice it or not, it depends on the person.
Well, it does because you know what? I never used. I kind of watched. I'm gonna give her a bit of a shout out here. The Long Island Medium. Now, I never used to really. I wasn't a fan of hers or anything, but she came up in my feed, and I'd seen her show before. And the more I watch it now, especially doing this type of work, right? And I love her attitude. She says, "I'm not here to convince you of what I'm doing is real or not real. I'm here." To share messages of healing from your loved ones over from the other side. And I guess if they take them, and obviously they're not going to show somebody that doesn't want to receive a message, but it can be
Right.
very, very healing. So, where do you think ghosts come from then? Just off the top of my head, where do you think they come from?
Where do they come from?
Mhm.
Ghosts
Yeah,
from people.
from obviously people, but why do you think we have them then? Why do you think we have them?
Oh, I'm not sure, but it's probably different depending on each situation. It's like some of my stories in my book, they're
Okay.
very relevant to the idea that people have experiences because that's what they need to have in one way or another. They've got to somehow, they need to have that experience.
Okay, so when you say need, and I'm asking you purely out of curiosity, when you say need, do you mean from a personal perspective, a spiritual perspective, a life perspective?
Spiritual, usually
Okay.
spiritual. You know,
So,
it's like something that is necessary in a way to help them grow.
okay. So with following that thought, and I agree with you, who do you think orchestrates that experience, or does it just happen? Like, do you believe in coincidence or
Sometimes I think those things just happen because there's two people and they come together because that's what's necessary for the moment.
Mhm.
But but sometimes I think they're orchestrated in bigger ways when it's big important things, like watching The Matrix. You know, that movie, The Matrix, was there was scenes in The Matrix that you would suggest, yeah, that was necessary, that was relevant, to that experience. But in real life, those things happen too, and I think those things happen to people when they're necessary.
I couldn't disagree with you. I gotta tell you though, when The Matrix came out, I remember when it first came out, I was watching this going, "Oh my gosh, this is weird. I really can't get into it." I have actually rewatched all of them numerous times, and I forget what podcaster it was. They had said that The Matrix is actually a documentary, and I can't say whether it is or it isn't, but it does have a lot of concepts. Like, for example, and I believe it was in the first one, please forgive me for anybody that's a Matrix fan, but it's when Neo, gets through and he's in the room. Is it I think he's called the timekeeper. Please, or the key, because there's the key maker, and I think I forget who he is, but to me, it looked like he was defined as the leader. And they went into that room. He had the white slick back hair, white beard, all dressed in white. But the interesting thing that really caught my eye was the TV screens playing all around them, like every little scene almost of everything
Oh
Neo had
yeah,
gone through in life.
yeah, yeah.
But
That was freaky. That doesn't really speak to me, and as far as helping an individual grow.
But it did for me finally. You know why? Because when I started understanding more about a life review with studying near death experiences, and I'm not saying everybody has this grandiose thing with all these TVs and this man dressed in white, but and again, I always say I don't know all the answers. It's just from my own experience or what I believe maybe I receive from my guides is that as I understand it, when we pass over for the life review, we're not really judged. We judge ourselves, but we also get to experience what people felt from their perspective as because of our actions, especially say we'd hurt somebody or whatever. And it's all for learning, like to take what did you learn from that experience rather than saying, oh, you were terrible. If that makes sense,
Right.
that's the way
Yeah.
it resonated with me. So,
Yeah.
but I hear what you're
Yeah.
saying.
I just didn't. When I saw all the different versions of him, I was like, I don't know about this. There was hundreds. You know, there was just incredible numbers.
Yeah, but you get into timelines, right? And different dimensions. And it depends how deep and woo woo somebody goes, right? Because
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm
Mhm.
just saying anything's possible.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you, Richard. You're right. He was the architect. That was the name of him, the architect. Thank you. Um, so, getting back to your book, um, what I wanted to ask you is what helped you with the research besides your own client, besides obviously your experience and being a professional in your field? Was there anything else that helped you, or did you base it all on your?
Well, it was the idea of that experience I had at the Concord Library. Was one classic example where something happened inside of me and then it happened in the real world. And
Did you?
and then it transforms you. It transforms you.
Mhm.
Makes you change because you've had this experience. So that was part of it. Like that
Can
example was a good example because it was part of it that
can
would
you
help.
refresh people's memories? Because there's new people here probably that haven't heard
Well,
your
sure.
experience before.
I went to the Concord State Library because I had done my genealogy, and I had everybody up to a Revolutionary soldier who was a captain in the war. He was I had up to him, and then his father I had all the way down to him, but I didn't have a way to connect the two of them. And so when I was trying to connect the two of them, I I went to the Concord State Library. It was my last chance, last choice, nowhere else I could go. And there was nothing there, nothing. There was these three old men sitting in the corner talking, and they were mumbling. I couldn't make out their words. And then I turned around and I started walking away, and I heard one of them, as clear as a bell in my mind, say, "Check the land deeds." And so I
Wow.
went to the Nashua, the Mormon church, and I ordered the land deeds because they had them all on microfilm. And they
Mhm.
came in, and one of the deeds literally had something to the effect of selling widow Mary Woodard selling to her son, Captain Amos Woodard. And that
Mhm.
proved that he was the son of his father
Mhm.
also.
And so that obviously that would be life-changing. So what are the chances? My mind's going in circles here. Like, what are the chances, right? And second of all, how did that change you? Like, did it cause you to
Well,
look
it was
deeper
just
into it?
one of numerous things that opened me up. It was just one of those things that, it's a good example of how something happens inside and then it happens in the outside world.
Mhm.
And it proves that what happened inside was relevant, mattered,
Absolutely. Go ahead, sorry.
so that's
Mhm.
all.
I got you. Um, okay, so you say the universe is alive with invisible beings. Who or what are they?
The invisible beings, they can
Yes.
be anything. They can be ghosts, they can be creatures, they can be other beings of other dimensions, other beings of other worlds. My grandfather, who had an eighth grade education, my mom's dad, he told me one time, he said, "How, if the universe goes on forever and ever, how can there not be life elsewhere?" And I
Absolutely.
agreed with him. I said, "That's incredible. That's an incredible statement."
Showing too that your grandfather
Was a
and I
wise
very wise, but also, what I wanna say, and not disrespectful to anybody else, you could tell he was not a very egotistical person to think that
No, he
we're the
wasn't.
only beings, and that shows character to me, so that's what I was trying to say, that he
Right,
was.
right. It does. And he had that quality about him. My
Mhm.
grandfather was the kind of guy that when we had dinner at my family's house, he always waited to the last one to get his meal, and
Oh,
there was
really?
always plenty of food there. My grandfather died, and then there was plates that were
Mhm.
empty when everybody hadn't gone through,
Oh, wow.
you know? And so it was very interesting. My grandfather was a good man. He was a really good man.
Well, you could tell, like I said, just a few things that you've shared, you could tell that he was a bit of a deep think, not bit, fairly deep thinking, obviously, to ask, because that's a question, right? That's a question a lot of people ask, and then I think it depends on how you perceive it, and the fact that to him, and I have to agree with what your grandfather said. I believe we're not the only beings in this universe, nor do I believe this is the only universe, because I do
Yeah.
think it goes on forever. But I want to go back to what you just said. So invisible beings like creatures, where do you think they come from?
I have no idea where they come from, but they do exist. I know they do exist. I remember a woman sharing an experience with me in my book where she talked about a black blob that
Hmm.
was at where she worked, and she saw it numerous times, and it was moving around on the ceiling. And then she went to go in the underground with a couple of friends, and she was going to wait outside, and she saw it again. And then she went to a friend's house, and she saw it again. And but it left her alone after that.
Interesting. I got so many thoughts about that. So I agree with you that there's many invisible things, but so I'm gonna we'll stay within the supernatural. So where do you think things like Bigfoot and dogmen come from, and cryptids and
Well, they exist too in another dimension
mhm. But
or
they're
another
here. They
world.
come here though too.
Right, they do. But they can transfer themselves, I think.
I think so too. And then of course you got extraterrestrials, and then you know, I guess I'm gonna
I remember watching one of the what was it? Scully and Mulder,
oh yeah, the X-Files.
the X-Files, watching
Mhm,
one of the X-Files, and these creatures came down in this car with this couple in it, stopped, dead stopped, and then the creatures came down and they were grays. And then another ship came down, and this big, huge kind of creature that didn't have good language came down and started arguing and complaining and making getting upset and said, "Leave them alone,
mhm,
leave them alone."
mhm.
And he was the good guy.
Okay. I believe that because you know
But
what?
you wouldn't see that in his behavior. You would have thought he might have been upset or not healthy.
Mhm.
But if you could see beyond that, you would see that he was the good creature.
I hear you. There's actually again looking at the paranormal. There's somebody I follow on there. Shanklin, his name is, and he is a part of the Navajo. And I love one of these exercises he shares. He does some teaching on there. He's a young guy too. Him and his brother used to work together. His brother is a medicine man for that part where they are. Love the way they deal with the paranormal too. But what he had done was he had put up a bunch of pictures that are quite terrifying looking of various different entities and spirits, as they would call it within their culture. And he was trying, if people were interested, to get people to feel into the picture rather than just use their eyes. Because if you used your eyes, they all would have been labeled evil, but not all of them were evil. It kind of goes a little bit along with what you're saying, right? From the
Yeah,
outside looking in, he didn't look like a good guy, this being, but he was in that episode, right?
yeah, he was.
Hmm.
Yeah, and so that makes sense to me.
Exactly. Well, I would never, I always said I never went looking for this, but the experiences I have had with the paranormal and ET and UFO, that's why I kind of do what I do now. I never went looking for this stuff. I was always kind of science based with, going to university to become a nurse and planned to be a doctor had I not hurt my back. And this sort of opened up a whole brand new way of thinking. I got to tell you that. So, have you had any experiences with any kind of spirits, though, yourself or somebody close to you that?
I
Because,
remember when I was a kid,
mhm,
I saw a guy when I was going to sleep. It was probably right before you go to sleep. You can
mhm,
see these images,
perfect time.
and it's like hypnagogic or hypnopop.
Exactly. I was
And
just going to say it. Mhm,
I saw this guy with a white hood.
mhm,
It was pointy, but it wasn't pointy, and it was he had this hood on, And then when I was in my 20s, I was managing a group home when I was working on my master's,
Mm-hmm.
and I had uh, I had this guy say to me, this client who was schizophrenic, say, Fred, a man sitting in your seat with a hood on. He had a white hood on,
Yeah.
and that
That,
was years later. Years
oh,
later.
okay. So I wanted to ask you about this. You kind of opened this door, and if it's not a good topic, that's okay. But having worked in the mental health field myself, I have a couple uncles actually that have schizophrenia. And I've often, and don't get me wrong, and I'm not a doctor, so I don't diagnose, but there are certain markers, obviously, for severe illnesses like schizophrenia. But there have been some patients that I've had, and even few relatives, that some of the things that they claim to be seeing in their illness, and they are ill, is the fact that I often wonder, are they really seeing something? I like, I don't know how you'd prove that anyways, but to me, I've often wondered that, when
Well, in
people
other
hallucinate.
countries, they say that other countries are better at helping people than we are when
Mhm,
it comes to that aspect of things. And that is because they take them for real. They believe
mhm,
they're real experiences.
mhm. I have to agree with you because, one of my partner's relatives apparently, and he was mentally ill, but apparently when it first manifested, I think The Terminator had come out, that movie, and this relative had dressed all in black, armed themselves with a shotgun, was riding a motorcycle. This was in Canada. So guns are, I gotta be careful that word on YouTube. Sorry, pew pews are not allowed. And apparently, and he was shooting off the gun. He wasn't shooting at people. He was positive he was seeing demons and he was shooting at them. And I often wonder, maybe he did see something like that, right? We use the word invisible, and most of us can't see otherworldly beings, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
every once in a while somebody does.
Mhm. My boys, I really believe that young children, and I think that animals can see into that other world. I really, really do. I know
Oh,
when
I
I,
think animals can too. One of my dogs, my German shepherds, they're
oh, I
black.
have a German Shepherd.
Yeah, they're black. And
Mine too.
well, the oldest one, I took her for walks, and
Hmm.
she always wanted to meet people and meet the other animals. And
Hmm.
every once in a while, there would be a dog that would be bad, but she wouldn't realize it right away. But she always protected herself. But
Hmm.
there were these two occasions where we were walking, and she started growling at the guy. There was two
Hmm.
guys separately walking by themselves at different times
Yep.
who were between 30 and 40 something, and she didn't like them.
Hmm.
And I really think she knew something I didn't know.
I have to agree with you because my dog loves everybody too. And yeah, animals know. They know. Like if they don't like somebody, there's a reason why. Because I always say animals are such an example of pure unconditional love, right?
Yeah.
And when I'm helping people with paranormal issues, I have a bit of a questionnaire I go through, and that's one of my earlier ones. The questions that I'll ask: do you have small children or animals around you? And if so, what are you seeing? I'd love to hear your thoughts on, say, children with an imaginary friend. What's your thoughts about that?
Sometimes I think it's real, and sometimes I think it's fantasy. It all depends on the person.
Hmm.
I've
Yeah.
met people that were truly psychotic, and I've met people that did really have experiences.
Sorry, I meant young children, though, right? Because it could
Yeah.
be, we chalk it up to being, and not that children can't have mental health issues, but we chalk it up to it being
But I've met
imagination.
young children that had mental health issues.
Oh, yeah,
And I've
definitely.
dealt young
Mhm,
children that I think had real experiences.
mhm, mhm. So, let's see, we got a few comments here. Let's see, we've got Stone Hobbit. I think when we were talking a little earlier, he said, "My grays got me out of the city and over time got me ready to live in a rural, almost medieval, gave me warnings beforehand, helping me make choices." Well, if that works for you, I guess. He also added Alzheimer's to patients see things. He said, "Oh, so it sounds like there's a patient that saw nano spiders. You knew nothing about nanos. Interesting." So Michelle Plummer is adding to, "I'd put money on it. They know for sure." And I think she's talking about the animals as we were. And Heidi Gall says, "I absolutely agree too. Animals know, and I do look for my cat for confirmation of what I'm feeling." I'd have to agree.
Yeah, that's good.
Kathy Hanley Little said, "One of my former dogs knew good people and bad people. She had a great sense of people." So I have to agree. Definitely, definitely. Um, it's there. This is the one I wanted to ask you. Think I could find it? I was looking. So can you expand about your book? Can you expand a little bit on the 12 key findings that are the common thread of the supernatural experience individuals are reporting on a historical level?
The first thing is that it can happen anywhere to anyone.
Hmm.
So those are two different points. One, it can happen to anyone, and another, it can happen anywhere. It doesn't have to happen in a mansion or a certain event. It can happen anywhere.
Hmm.
And then there's the idea that people people think someone's going to judge them, so they think they're going crazy, or they think that they didn't really have the experience, or if they did, they don't. There's all that stuff.
Hmm. Well, they're
So,
definitely. I remember, like in my house, the stuff that had happened, and I documented it because, again, having worked before in the mental health field as a nurse, never mind, I have family. On my dad's side, some of my uncles have severe mental health issues with schizophrenia. Just one or two. My dad's one of 17 children. So,
oh God,
my grandmother, apparently good Roman Catholic, French Canadian family, was pregnant every year for 25 years. She
wow.
was not a pleasant woman. I now know why. So my dad was actually, she named two kids the same name. My father's legal first name is identical to the youngest child's first legal name. So I guess she forgot she called two by the same name.
Well, if you give them a second name that's different, then
Yes.
it's not the same
Well,
person.
It's James. So my youngest uncle goes by Jim, and my father, his middle name is Alfred. So he actually goes by Alf, right? But still, their first names are James. But that, speaking of the supernatural, though, my dad told me this story many times when I was a little girl, and obviously they were very poor with that many children. And my dad would have been about 12 years old. So it's sort of in the middle end of the children. And I guess his third oldest brother, who I obviously would never have met if my dad was 12, um, I guess everybody came home for dinner around the dinner table. And I think it was like 6:03 or 6:07 or something. And I guess my grandmother stood up as my father reported it, screaming her third son's name, saying he's dead. And my grandfather said, "Sit down. You're being ridiculous. You're scaring everybody. He's probably just late and he'll be home." And this would have been sometime in the mid 50s. And apparently, the police showed up about an hour and a half later. And what had happened was my uncle, they used to fix cars. The boys back then, there was no seat belts. Not that they had to build cars, but not having a lot of money. So I guess as it was being told is my uncle was driving in this hot rodded up car, no seat belt, and his best friend was speeding along behind him. And right at 6:03 p.m., my uncle's door opened and he fell out, and very tragically, his best friend ran him over. How
Oh
would you know
God.
something like that? Like, how would you even explain that from a scientific or any kind of perspective, do you think?
Well, it's true. So if it really happened that
Mhm,
way, then it's proved.
mhm. Like, well, it that's exactly, I think, where your book's kinda going, right, too, and I love what you said, like, some people have these experiences, some people don't. But when you were talking about worrying about if people think you're gonna be crazy, I can remember I finally talked to my own personal doctor after quite a few years of going through this, and she at the time was from a different country. I no longer have her, and I miss her dearly, but I no longer have her as a practitioner. And she said to me, "Lorilei, why didn't you tell me about this?" And I said, because I didn't want you to 5150 me and sign me into a psychiatric. And I had proof, like other people had experienced this, other people had seen it. I had pictures, I had video, I had all kinds of stuff. But this is a topic. I always say, you're standing in line, or depending on where you live, on queue, at the grocery store, for example, waiting to pay for groceries. And it's not a topic that we're going to openly discuss with other people, right? You don't.
Yeah, most of the time.
Hmm.
Some of the
Well,
time people do. I had a guy, one of the stories in my book was about a guy that when I was at the gym and he came up to me and he said, "You're that paranormal guy. You're that guy that writes the stories on the supernatural." I
hmm
said, "Yeah." He said, "I got to tell you a story. I was riding my motorcycle and he was a
hmm
biker." And he said, and I was riding my motorcycle and I slid on some sand and I got hurt and my went down and it injured my leg a little bit. And he said, I was laying there on the ground and something said to me, "If you want to live, get up right now." And he got up and he moved and a truck went right over the spot where he was laying right
So,
after he moved.
so what do you think that was?
Well, that's what he said. He said, I think that that was like something telling him, whether it was his own mind or someone else, it was something telling him that if he
Hmm.
wanted to live, he needed to move.
Hmm. Oh, I
And
believe
he
I
did.
believe it 100%. Hmm.
And he did.
Hmm. No, I believe it 100%. Then again, I guess when you start getting into the more woo-woo stuff like I do, as we call it, I believe we have guides. I believe in angels. I know a lot of people don't believe in demons. I've had a dream that happened 17 years ago that told me it was a tree in my previous home I was in the front yard. Tell you what the man was wearing, right down to what his hair looked like and the whole bit. And he tried to offer me wealth and tried to offer me fame and ridiculous stuff. And I remember, because I remember saying, "Who are you?" And I don't usually remember my dreams, but this was like I was there. Like I said, this was 17
I had
years.
a real experience where I was in my front yard
Okay.
and I was thinking about how most of the time when I played ball with people, they were selfish. They were self-centered. They were trying to win. They
Hmm.
were always trying to compete. And
Hmm.
I said to God, I said, "Why are people so selfish? Why can't they be more healthy?" I said it in a really positive way. It's
Hmm.
in my book, actually, in my other book, my perceptual hypnosis book. And and the response was a white pigeon landed about 10 feet away from me. And
Hmm.
I knew that that meant something, but back then I didn't even know what that meant.
Hmm.
I had no idea that white animals were sacred or that
Hmm.
were spiritual.
Especially a dove, right? The sign of peace.
It wasn't
And
a dove, it was a pigeon.
oh, pigeon, I'm sorry. Oh, white,
It
but
was
that's
a
pretty rare. That's pretty
completely
rare.
white pigeon.
Yeah, that's pretty rare. I don't think
Yeah,
I've ever seen one white. That's incredible. It's kind of like
yeah.
seeing a unicorn. I would think, because I don't think I've ever
But it
seen
was
one.
it was a white pigeon.
Wow. Maybe that's why I thought dove as you were saying that. My brain went to dove because I thought,
Yeah, but I wanted it to be a dove, but it wasn't. It was a pigeon, and it
mhm.
was all white.
Yeah, but looking back, that's profound. I mean, I believe every word you're saying, but like, where did it come from? Like, why did I have that kind of mind, right?
Well, I
So,
think it was acknowledgement of what I was saying, like
mhm.
that was real, and that what was going on was real, and it didn't need to be that way.
Well, it obviously was profound when you said this happened when you were young, and you still remember the experience. I know I certainly would if it was a white pigeon. Well, that's where I was going with this story about what happened to me. So, like I said, this thing, it was a man, and he tried to offer me wealth and fame and whatever. And I can't say here on air, but it was not pretty language what I told him in my dream where to go, because he wanted me to follow him. He said, all you have to do is agree to follow me. And I said, absolutely not. And I said, who are you? And he told me his words. He said, he told me he was a demon, told me his name, and told me how to spell it. And again, much more emphatically, with much more colorful cursing, is what I used in the dream. I told him where to go. And he looked down at me and went, oh, no, 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 no. Every time you see a crow or a raven, you're going to know who it is. And I remember at that time calling on Archangel Michael. And it was the most brilliant flash of sapphire type blue, royal blue, silver, and white. I woke up shaking, crying, and in a sweat. Not me at all. And then all heck did break loose in my house, but I could never find this name. I'd never heard this name before, being raised Roman Catholic and having to go to church and what have you. But about 5 or 6 years later, I was helping someone with the paranormal. And sure enough, right there on the page, every single thing I'd been told in that dream was exactly it, exact name, exact spelling, what class supposedly it belonged to, the animal form, all of it. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So how did that happen? That's how my paranormal story started. So I have no idea why. It's crazy. So how did it come to fruition, almost like what I was told in a dream?
Yeah, that's the key, is that those things happen, become real, and that's
Yes,
the key.
but how
Like,
do you go ahead, sorry.
I think that's the key to the truth, that those things are real, and
Mhm.
therefore they do manifest in the world, and they happen, and then it's real.
So do you have theories on anything, like, for example, I believe everything is energy. Our thoughts, our words, our emotions, everything down to the tiniest microscopic thing on the planet.
No, I just
And
accept experiences as they come along.
okay.
I don't try to analyze them all and try to figure out where they're coming from. My stories are broken down by chapter, by they're connected, and they say the same thing and similar ideas, but those are simple things, and those are basic things that
Mhm.
are to each. Like, for example, one chapter I had, a person who told me a story about how their great aunt and uncle, they used to be able to feel them, and they were sitting there with me and they could feel me. And that when their aunt and uncle passed and they came back, they felt them, and then they saw them in their mind,
Mhm.
and they heard them, and they were real to them. I
Mhm.
had another person that had goosebumps and stuff like that that would happen when she had an experience.
Mhm.
So those are bodily sensations.
So when you write your books, what's your hope that people get out of them? Or is it more a report, would you say, of experiences as well as your knowledge base? Or what do you want people to get out of the books that you write when you
Well,
cover these
to
topics?
open them up to realize there's other people like them, or to open them up if they've never been open. is the idea in that book, Developing Your Supernatural Awareness.
Mm-hmm.
That's the idea. Either open up to other people's experiences that are similar to yours, or have an experience which you've never had.
And so you would never tell somebody, obviously, how to do it. Then you do it just by sharing your thoughts and, your professional work and what you've discovered, as well as it sounds like.
Right. Kind of like, yeah, it was just to kind of help them along
Oh,
in a gentle way.
and Heidi Gall just said that. I love that, Dr. Frederick. So she loves what you're saying there. And I think that, you know what, I think I'm just going to say hi to a few people on we got a few people on Instagram. They all hopped in here. We got Sup Mandari, Marjuki joined, my cousin, Freckled Fox 10. Hello, Jacqueline. Haven't seen you forever. Georgie Beam, psychologist joined. And we got Mr. Big Time Mike. Got some interesting names over there. And we got a few people on TikTok. They keep dipping in and dipping out. They're going, what's this woman talking about? And I'm not looking at the screen. So hi, everybody that's joined over there. I know there's a lot of people trying to come on as a guest. I apologize, but we're right in the middle of a podcast. I'm trying to get you guys used to it because I'm working on a streaming key and then you get to see the whole thing. If you want to join in the conversation as well and see us on screen, you can head over to YouTube, either UFO Paranormal and United Public Radio or the Angel Rock with Lorilei Potvin. Also, we're right at the hour, so I'll do our station ID. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to UFO Paranormal and United Public Radio Network. And you can listen to us on 105.3 FM out of Mississippi or 107.7 FM out of New Orleans. And this is the Angel Rock, and I'm your host, Lorilei Potvin. And this is our returning guest, Dr. Frederick Woodard. So welcome. Oh, hi, Mark Foster. Welcome. I thought I saw you there. Welcome, welcome. So going back to that, I think, you know what? That's a beautiful thing. And I haven't seen many people write from that perspective about the supernatural. So I love actually the way that you described it as well, because I'll tell you, I sure could have used a book like yours years ago, because who do you even talk to when you're going through an experience like this, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
it's more acceptable now than it was in the past.
I think there's also a lot of misinformation too. Like there's always good and maybe not so good, but like you're right, it is more acceptable, I think, because of the various TV shows that have come out. But there can also be some misinformation, but it certainly opens the door. That's where I was going to say a little bit ago when we first started talking a little bit about this, that it's not acceptable to talk about. I find if you're in a large group and somebody kind of nudges that door open a little bit, they kind of test the waters, and then somebody else jumps in, and then somebody else jumps in. And then before you know it, usually 80% of the group has had some kind of experience or wants to have an experience. And before you know it, you're having quite a conversation. Have you found that yourself?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I definitely have found it too. Hi, Gwen Patterson. Oh, sorry. Heidi says, exactly, Lorilei. Society wasn't so accepting back years ago. No, they weren't. Like I said, I thought people were going to think I was crazy. So when this was happening, I thought I was going crazy because things started missing and would show up later. Nobody had moved them. Like there was all kinds of unusual things that were happening. And then it got more and more severe as time went on. So statistics have shown that more and more people believe in the afterlife, as ever emerging evidence and information have proven that the body dies, but the spirit lives on. Also, as we discover and uncover more about the universe, do you think we are moving into a new era of acceptance, along with less fear in these subjects?
Yes, I think we're moving into a more acceptance, but it's only among certain groups of people. There's other people that are very resistant to it.
There's still a lot of fear, obviously, about death, too. Do you find that as well in your practice?
Not in my practice. People in my practice are very open.
Mm-hmm. I still find that there's having a good bulk of my my work when I was working out in the community as a nurse. I worked in palliative care, and there were a lot of people that still had a lot of fear about death. And in a way, you can't blame people because it's really the unknown, unless you've had, say, a near-death experience or something like that. What's your thoughts on that?
Right. There are some people that are very afraid.
Hmm. I don't know. I maybe it's the circles I travel in, but I found that the majority of people usually are afraid because whether they just think that it's just this life, that's all we have, there's nothing after, or
Well, I don't
you.
really work with too many people like that, but
Mhm. Well, how about then you share what you want people to know about the supernatural and from your perspective then.
well, my perspective is that you got to be open to more,
Mhm.
and that's all you need to do is be open. Because if you're open, it'll lead you where you need to go. But if you try to control it, that's where the issues come.
What do you mean by control?
Like try to force things and make things happen in
Ah,
a
okay.
certain way. Those won't necessarily work.
So, what if you run into someone that says, I want to be open, but how do I be open?
Well, then you work with them where you can. I don't. This is mostly research for me, so I don't do a lot of it on case by case constantly. I have experiences once in a while with people, but
Hmm.
it's more of a research based thing.
Okay. Because I was even thinking from a personal perspective, but from a research base, I can see why you.
But my personal perspective is that I personally believe in all this stuff.
Hmm.
One of my grandfathers was Chief Matakawanda. And when I went up to visit my cousins, all my distant cousins from the Native American up in Bangor,
Hmm.
um, one of them, a woman, said to me, "This is your cousin. That's not. That's your cousin. That's not. That's your cousin. That's not." And then she looked at me and she said, "And Chief Matakawanda used to be able to melt ice, and turn water into ice."
Interesting. Did she give you any more details about it? And again, from a personal
No, it was
perspective,
just in front of everybody that she said all that stuff.
see, I'm fascinated by, again, I brought up Sean Clenn, or not that he's the be all to end all, it's not that, but I'm very fascinated by First Nations and their perspective when it comes to the supernatural, because where I live too, there's a very strong history of First
See,
Nations.
and what one of the things I did when I was up there, I went to a few spiritual nights, and while I was doing it one night, I looked up and I said, "Grandpa, I hope you see us. I hope you see 300 years later, me and my cousin came together."
Mhm.
And I don't know that he did, but I
I
hope he
think he
did.
did. He did. He did. Because you know what? I believe our loved ones never leave us. Like, don't get me wrong, they're not hanging out with us, 24/7.
Right, I know. I realize that.
Yeah, but for our listeners, I meant mostly too, right? But I really, sorry, TikTok does this to me all the time, has to give me a puzzle to solve right in front of like I've got no other buttons to push. No, I'm really, really, to me, especially being over in North America, I do believe they were the first people here. And to listen to the legend and the lore, like where I live, we have the sleeping giant, and it's actually the legend of Nana Bijou, it's called. And then on the south side of our city, rurally, we have what's called Little Niagara Falls. It's called Kekabeka Falls, and the legend intertwines. And it literally looks like a rock foundation of a giant laying down, sleeping on his back. And the legend goes that he guards the world's largest untouched silver mine. And honestly, anybody that has tried to access it has lost their life. And it's part of the legend. Now, does it happen because people heard the legend, or is there some truth to it? Right?
Yeah.
And then you think about like the Thunderhawk and the little people with First Nations people. Have you heard anything about that at all?
No.
No? That's a pretty interesting perspective. Or I know we've had some conversations too about I know it goes with Appalachia, but also with some First Nations people believe you never whistle in the woods, for example. And I'll ask you this too. Why do you think things like trolls and giants and vampires and werewolves and things like this, why do you think that those stories still persist? Do you think there was some truth, or dragons, for example, any of those things? Why do you think they still persist to this day?
I'm not sure.
You don't think
I
maybe,
haven't I haven't experienced those aspects.
no? Okay, so from a personal perspective, then, what have you experienced with the supernatural that you'd like to share?
Personal experience.
Yeah.
Well, it's been mostly my research that I'm talking about. Personal experience has been very limited, but very, kind of connected.
Well, true. Yeah. And I understand about the research too, because there's not a lot of people. Well, there's more now, I think, that are doing research in this field. There are. But it's important. And I love that you're open minded about the fact that, like you said, you know, you have to be open to the experience. I just know I've run into, and that you can't force it, like you had said. And there are people that want it to happen so badly. And I think that that's where things can go wrong, can't they, when people do try to force things?
Yes, that's the bad part. When you want to make things happen, then you try to make them happen, and then you think they happened and they didn't. I remember a roommate of mine
Excuse me.
was talking to me about, "Oh, don't you hear the ghosts in the walls?" And I thought, "Yeah, the chipmunks. I hear the chipmunks."
Mhm. Well, I think it can be about perspective too. Like, I love the examples that you used tonight, because those were things that, like you said, the little girl talking to you about, you got to thought, I think you said stop thinking about women's clothing because of you were thinking
Stop
of
thinking about men and women's clothing.
men and women's clothing, right?
Yeah.
Now, but that was something provable to yourself if you think about it, right? Because you had a good reason why you were thinking about this, because of a obviously somebody else you were working with. But the fact that this little girl could pick up on it, that's provable to me, don't you think?
Yeah, and
Hmm.
I had a very open mind with him. I was trying to understand what he was going through. I wasn't trying to judge him or anything, and so I was trying to understand it, and I couldn't, and I couldn't kind of get the the what was really going on. But she came in and kind of spoke to me about it, and there
Hmm.
was nothing in there that could have given that away.
Hmm. Well, I have to agree with you. Like I say, all I have are theories and things that I've experienced. And, I don't know everything. I know I don't know everything, but that's where I was going with energy. Like, if you break everything down to just energy, right? And one of the laws of energy is it can neither be created nor destroyed, right? It can be transferred from one place to another. And if our thoughts are energy, where does that go, right? Does it go into the universe? Does it go into a collective? Where does it go? And can we all access it, or can we not?
Yeah,
Right? It's
those
food
are
for
big
it's food
questions.
for thought.
Those are big questions. Some
Hmm.
people try to answer those questions, but
Hmm.
I would not want to answer something I don't know.
So then, getting back to your research in the books, right? I love what you were starting to say about how they could help people. Is there some conclusions that you've come to with the research that you've done?
The only conclusions are certain chapters based on certain, like acting ethically is the last chapter.
Oh,
That's
I love that.
stories and there's one guy that came into my office and he told me I go into crowds and I take energy from people. And the reason I
Ooh,
do it is because they don't protect themselves. And you can't tell, and you're going to tell me that's wrong, but I do it. And
wow.
he did. And then
Yeah.
he told me other stories about how he astral projected to people. And he was a little more respectful in those situations where there was a couple of animals that didn't like him. He didn't go back there. But
Mm-hmm.
when there was animals that did like him, he went back.
Mm-hmm. That is absolutely fascinating because there's a reality show my co-host David told, not reality show, it's a fake reality show. It's my co-host David Hansel told me about, and it's since become like a TV series. It actually came out with it was a small independent film, and it's called What We Do in the Shadows. And it's about these three supposed vampires. So it's not reality, but that was kind of how it's based on. They're being followed with film crew is the premise. But the fourth one is an actual energy vampire. And he is the nerdiest looking man you've ever seen, and he's got glasses, but he purposefully does exactly what you just said. Almost word for word what you just said, what that gentleman said to you. And he'll just show up at an office in the series and sit down and pretend he's worked there. Like the previous job, I think he had been there for 5 years. Nobody knew who he came from, where he came from. His name's Colin Ferguson. And he literally bores people to death, but that would be how he would suck their energy. And that fascinates me what that client said to you, because he's purposefully doing that without judgment, but he knows how it works, right?
Right.
Hmm. And imagine how gifted too. Like you could willfully astral project, right? Not everybody can do that. You can learn how to do it, but to be
Well,
able
that's
to
what he
do
did. He
that,
learned how to do it.
hmm, I think that's fascinating. Wow. Was he ever, I know obviously you can't get personal details, but was he ever able to explain why he felt the need to take other people's energy?
No, he didn't get into that. He just told me that I was going to tell him that that was wrong. And I smiled at him and I said, that's right.
He is wrong. Yeah, right. Absolutely. But there are people too, I find, that I would say are energy vampires, but not purposefully. But yeah, I always say I know when I'm around one, because about 5 minutes is about as long as I can be around them. Otherwise, I leave it just feeling drained. And
There's different kinds of draining.
mhm,
There's psychological, which is narcissism and things like that. And then there's the spiritual, which is the energy vampires.
mhm.
And then there's the physical. Sometimes people need energy.
I'm glad you clarified that, because you were absolutely right. I was thinking about that as you were saying. So I want to ask you a question then. I have been finding, and maybe it's because it's again being more out in the open, and I think almost overutilized, but I'm sort of seeing that there seems to be an increase in a lot in society with narcissism. Are you seeing any of that clinically, or is it just because?
No, I don't. I don't work with that.
Okay. Well, what else can you tell us then? I don't want to take away from your book, but I don't want to. People are asking a lot of spookier type questions. So do you have any
Right.
other case studies you'd love to share that are sort of unique and center around the supernatural?
Well, one of the case studies I did in my book was an example of a girl who used to be able to leave her body and travel to people's places, and then she would tell them about it, and they would verify that she was right. And she went to see this friend of hers, and she went into the house astrally. And as she got down toward the basement, she saw him, and he was crying with a guitar, playing a
Oh, my-
guitar. And then he took a gun and he was going to kill himself. And
oh
she
my
screamed his
goodness.
name, and he didn't do it. He pulled it away, and he had a scar from where the bullet
Grazed him.
went off his body. And but it didn't go deep enough to really hurt him. But he had
Hmm.
this scar. And then he took when she asked him, he told her and he said, "See, there's the scar right there. That really happened."
I believe it. Absolutely, 100%. I love stories like this because these are the kind of things that people don't believe in. And as you just shared, he had the scar there. And obviously, she remembered going there, right? It would be more profound that he was able to
Well,
relate.
she was crying too after because she thought he killed himself, but he didn't.
Oh, are you still there? Hopefully,
Yep.
that's not me.
Yeah, that is
Um,
you. It's not me.
oh, I think you're breaking up there. Hang on. You guys, let me know if it's me or is it, are you back, Dr. Fred?
Yeah, I think I am.
Yeah, something's going on here. Let me just, I don't know if it's me or it's you. Um, Hang on. I'll try turning off the, I don't know if I can turn off your camera. I was going to try that. Can you speak again just for a sec, please? Oh, yeah, it
Sure.
keeps cutting out.
Sure.
Um,
Um,
Let me double check. I can't check on this one. I'll have to check on this one. Give me one sec, guys, because we're having some live issues here. That if you can still hear me, because I didn't get to hear the last part there because it just cut off. It's telling us we got something wrong. Oh goodness, let's see. I'm just gonna see if it's gonna come up here. Are you still there? I don't know
yes,
if it's, yeah, if it's me or it's you. Yeah, it's acting silly. Um, Give me
you
one sec
seem
here.
fine now.
It's okay now, Richard? Okay, thank you, because I can't hear Dr. Fred. There, are you back?
Yep, I'm
Oh,
here.
good. I don't know what happened there, if it was my internet or not, but it just went crazy. I didn't even hear your answer. I'm so sorry. I was double checking to see which one of us it was. Sorry, would you
What was
mind?
the answer? The answer to what?
Whatever you were just saying, as soon as I asked you a question, you started talking. It was me. He said he never hung, so it was me. I didn't hear. Well, if they heard you, I guess we'll move on. So they heard you. Sometimes it's me, and then sometimes it's my guest. So it's me. So I
Uh,
apologize. Yeah, and then TikTok never did a thing, and I don't even have a SIM card in here. So it's so weird with the signal. I have
uh,
no, I don't have anything else running, and I have actually this computer, the phone, and another phone going, and this never cut off, and this stream did. So go figure. Hang on one sec here. Sorry. Uh, okay, so what positive experiences or aspects to awareness have you gained from writing, developing your supernatural awareness, connecting to an interactive universe? What are the positive?
well, some of the things were, like I said, the aspect of putting stories together that are connected and seeing how they're connected in little ways, like the body feelings and the ethical situations, things like that.
Hmm.
There's also at the very beginning, I think one of my chapters is it's a thought out of the blue because the person isn't thinking about anything that would imply that.
Okay. So I see where you're going with this is you're kind of documenting these experiences, but not really making a further, I don't want to say judgment, that's the wrong word, but you're documenting it so that people can see that these experiences happen. And like you said, you just need to be open to it. I love that that's what you were starting to say. I knew if as I started talking before I cut out about being ethical. And we do have a question from Michelle. I'm going to highlight that in just a second. Um, I love that you put in your book in the chapter about being ethical, because I think that is so important. And it doesn't matter where we are in life, we really do have to consider ethics. Or like,
Yes,
and people don't,
some
and then,
people don't.
or the other thing they do, it's kind of like the word normal, right? And I think it depends on where you've been raised and what your belief systems are and what field you work in. That, if anything, it should almost be that ethics are universal, but they're not. And so not everybody's ethics are the same. But I think it's very, very important to maintain that.
Yes.
Dr. Fred, Michelle Plummer asks, do you anticipate patients coming in with supernatural phenomenon, or is that out of the ordinary when it happens? That's a great question, Michelle. Thank you.
Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. So it depends on the person.
But you don't put
I
out the...
remember a story one time that a guy told me that he went to see his father who was dying, and his father was talking to his sister who had already died. And he came out of it and he looks at his son and he says, I don't understand. They both called me grandpa. And the son-in-law was sitting there and he broke down into tears and he said, we had 2 miscarriages. We never told anybody.
Oh.
So
And
that
so
was an interesting little event.
I I think it's profound for people that don't believe in this, and that's where I think your books are incredible. But as a medium and also working in palliative care, I'm actually writing a book. I'm collecting stories right now from mainly nurses, but first responders as well. I don't like the title, but death doulas, people that are at the bedside, I say, anybody transitions out of this lifetime. And I always say, I call it going back home. And it doesn't have to be in anybody else's belief system. But the incredible things that we witness at the bedside as somebody is transitioning out of this lifetime. And many report incredible stories, or as I had said at the beginning of the show, having studied near-death experiences for 40 years. Now, have you run into anything like that as well in your research?
Run into what?
Near-death experiencers?
Yes, I've had a few of those, a couple of those,
Mm-hmm.
and they've been unusual. I remember the one woman telling me that she left her body when she couldn't take the pain, and she was up in the ceiling looking down on herself, and the light was below her.
Okay.
You could see the light, but she couldn't understand what was going on, and it was a near-death experience where she came back to her body, but she never claimed to have died.
I've heard that before. I've definitely, I had, he's been on a couple times. Stephen, I forget his last name. He's in Australia, and he calls it a near-death experience. But again, he didn't clinically die. And I have another friend who was in college, and it was a Friday or Saturday night. They were sitting home watching a movie, and she decided to stand up to go grab some soda or something. And as she stood up, she said she literally felt like she had been transported someplace else. And the way she reported what she did going to the other side, she never collapsed, nothing happened. Her sister was there and a roommate, and apparently she just stood there, didn't blink, didn't do anything. And it was, the way she shared it was like somebody that had shared they had had a near-death experience. She claimed she went over to the other side.
Yeah, I had
So,
a woman in her 70s tell me a story about when she was young,
mhm,
in her 20s, and she she wanted to go to the laundromat on the weekend, and asked her husband to take her there,
mhm.
and he he wouldn't go, and she went to the laundromat and saw there was a guy in there and said, "Oh, good, I'll be safe." Well, the guy knocked her out cold and
Oh,
raped her, and she she said that she went to the light, and when she went to the light, she met somebody that she knew, but she didn't remember them after. And she said that when she got there, he said, "You can come, but you'll have to live your whole life over. And no, you can't bring your children because they need to live their lives." And
And
as a result of that experience, she had no desire to die, and she didn't want to leave her children. And so she came back and lived her life. She didn't want to relive her life either.
that's an intriguing experience.
And
Um,
she told me this when she was in her 70s. So
oh wow.
so it happened when she was in her 20s.
Oh, so that's quite a few years that have passed. So what a profound experience to share. Have
Yeah.
you guys got some other unusual experiences that you've covered or topics in the book that you'd love to share?
I think they're all different. They're every single one of them is different.
Hmm.
Um, there was a woman that was a psychic that went to a haunted house with her friend, and when she got there, when they went through certain parts of the building, she found a portal to the other world,
Yeah.
and then she all these people showed up, and she said that she helped them leave, and her friend got upset with her and said, "Why couldn't you wait till after? Like, why did you have to do that now? There's nobody here now."
Hmm. I have heard that you cannot believe how many times I have known mediums that have been kicked out of paranormal investigation teams or people that get very angry with exactly that scenario you just shared. How dare you help people cross over because now there's no one here?
Yeah,
just I'm just blown away by that.
yeah.
Like, I guess it depends what kind of human being you are too. And I don't say that judgmentally, but there's service to self or service
But
to
my
others.
stories are all very detailed, and they have all the. I include all the details of the experience in detail,
Hmm.
all the aspects of the little experience, each experience
Well,
in
that's
as
why
much.
people are going to want to buy your book, because even if you give a little bit out there about little bits and little nuggets, they're going to want to buy the whole thing to find out more on all the details. Like, what
Right.
was it about this lady's life? She's 70 something years old. This happened when she was in her 20s. What else was it, right? I'm sure there's more details in there.
Yeah, that's true.
So Michelle also added, I love Dolores Cannon's material. She really delivered both aspects of the patients, their personalities, and also the supernatural experiences. It made it very relatable and comprehensive. I'm interested in looking up your books. Have you ever followed the work of Dolores at all, or have you
I know
familiar with?
who she is.
Hmm.
I have my own ways, so I just kind of do my thing
Yeah, but
where
that's
I
what's
can
cool
only
about
can
it.
only do so much.
Yeah, but that's what's cool about it. You have your own way, and I think that that's what makes you unique in your field. Never mind
Yep.
the research and what you've shared in your books, but you're not trying to copy anybody. You're doing your own
No,
thing.
and you know my books, my two books that are out. You can get them through Amazon or any dealer. And the first book is Perceptual Hypnosis, a spiritual approach to expanding awareness. And the second book is Developing Your Supernatural Awareness.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your first book, because I don't even think we did that the first time you were on here. Would you mind doing that? Telling us a little bit about it? Because I said you got a few. There's going to be more
Well,
than one person out there that's going to want to buy your books listening to this. So I'd love to
my first book had the same kind of thing. It had exercises at the end of each chapter, but it was organized differently. I did it by chapters. Like I had one chapter on spirituality and religion, and one chapter on just it was based more on hypnosis.
So how can people how can hypnosis help people then with, say,
It helps open people up.
okay, I love hearing that. Okay, so it opens people up, helps people open up. So in what ways though for them? I've had hypnosis before and clinically as well, but I'd love to hear your perspective.
Well, I think it just helps people work on opening up more easily and naturally, and not necessarily instantly.
So does that refer to all aspects of life, or are you thinking more when you're making that statement more about spirituality or just life in
I'm
general?
thinking about spirituality. That was the whole point of my work,
Mhm.
was the spirituality aspects.
Okay. But that's not what you do in there all the time, you said, right? In your
No, that's
practice.
not what I do with my practice,
Mhm.
as I'm a clinical psychologist, so I do more of that work.
And you do more than obviously hypnosis too, right?
Right.
Right. Yes. Um, so we got Julie Jean Bassett here. Hang on, I wanted to say hello. I keep forgetting. I've got so many questions going through my mind, and I'm thinking about this. And I'm glad that you said that too. Like you said, it's not just hypnotherapy that you do. There's many different things that you do. Um, what do you think about? Okay, so I'm going to give you a theory, and again, it doesn't have to, or not a theory, idea here. It doesn't have to be professional, just even from your perspective. Um, so there's a being out there that's called Thin Man or Slender Man. And apparently it started with a creepy pasta story that somebody dreamt up on 4chan. And quite a few people, probably about 15 years ago around the world, got very drawn to the story. They created chat groups around the story. People believed in the phenomena. And now we're hearing stories of people encountering Thin Man or Slender Man. He's very unique looking. And again, in this day and age, you have to be very careful with AI and deep fakes, but seeing video and pictures. How do you think that kind of thing happens with the supernatural?
Well, people create it, I
Okay.
think.
You, you think with their thoughts and their words and their belief, right?
Yeah, they can create it
Hmm. Well,
to a
that
degree.
definitely. Go ahead. Sorry.
To a degree, they can create it.
No, I believe that wholeheartedly. I mean, when you talk about tulpas, right? That's what I think to me would be a good example of a tulpa, right? People believing in it, talking about it. Somebody came up with it in their mind, and for whatever reason, it went, if you will, for anybody listening, lack of a better word, viral, right?
Right.
So, yeah, people became obsessed with it, and yeah, and then it came to fruition. I don't know. It just gives me so many questions in my mind. I always say the
Well,
more I,
I don't think we have all the answers. As a matter of fact, I think as human beings, we're limited in what we're able to understand and what we're
absolutely.
able to really contemplate. And we have a limitation that we don't want to acknowledge,
So when you say a limitation, what do you mean by that?
that we don't understand everything. We can't understand all of it.
I agree. I agree 100%. And then if I've had this conversation, not necessarily on air, but off air. And most people I find when you start talking about time and timelines and dimensions and things like that, and then people start to try to wrap their minds around it, and then they realize, yeah, you're right, we don't know everything because we don't. Absolutely. I just want to go through here. So, what else do you want people to know about your book? Because, like I said, you've got a few people out here that already have written that they want to look into your book. I love that you have the exercises in both books. Have you got another book coming out?
No, I haven't decided on that.
Not
And
yet.
when I wrote these books, I didn't take, it didn't take me a few years. It took me years. Each book was years.
I could understand why, in the fact that even you said this isn't your whole practice. And then it's not like you're out looking for these types of cases. And it sounds like they're very unique, but instrumental to the type of book you're writing. So I could see, or am I off base with that? Why it would take so long?
No, it took so long because I had to get the interviews. I had to transcribe
Mhm.
the interviews. I had to re-interview the people I had to make sure I had everything that I needed. And then one day I put it all together,
That
but
makes
but it wasn't something, either book wasn't something I did overnight. And the hypnosis book is based on phenomenology. And I actually had a book that one of my mentors, Ann Cohen Richards, Dr. Ann Cohen Richards, um, was she had she had been mentored by Arthur Combs, and his partner was Donald Snag. And Donald
Mhm.
Snag had talked about doing phenomenology with hypnosis, but he didn't really do it himself. He just did a couple of little examples, and he never and no one else did it.
Mhm.
And I thought it was a great idea, and so in 2000 something, I decided to take that on. And in 2017, I published the book.
Well,
And
go ahead,
and
sorry.
then the other book I've been working on for a long time too. It's like 2024 when the book comes out. And when did I start it? In the same time period that I started the interviews for the other book. I started the interviews for that.
So when you say interviews, then we have a question here. So when you say interviews, so you said that, so, well, how did you find the subjects? Like, you said you just sort of ran into them through your practice, or did you put a call out to action, or?
I listed them in the paper when I
Oh,
first started. I listed them in the paper.
oh, that must have been interesting. What walked through the door?
Well, I
I
didn't. I would people would call me first, and then I would decide whether I wanted to interview the person or not.
for sure. I'm sorry, I'm not making light of that. I'm just imagining, because it doesn't matter how professional you would write it. I can just imagine, because I mean, everyday life, we meet all kinds of people, but we're talking about a subject, right? That's not mainstream. It's becoming more mainstream. So good on you. I can see why it took you many years. And I'm glad that you hung in there, because like I said, I think we need books like yours to help people start to at least be open to the topic, for sure. So Mark Foster says, I don't know. He says he doesn't know your books yet, but he says, but what is the good doctor's views on the possibility that ghosts and spirits are interdimensional beings? And then he also asked, and intelligent beings.
Well, they are intelligent, and they could possibly move between dimensions.
Okay. I agree with you, but okay. So, but what about, have you run into anybody in your research that was experiencing, say, residual activity, or residual haunting, it's sometimes called?
What was that?
A residual. So it's almost like watching a movie on a loop, like, for example, Gettysburg, where the battles took place there. And I've heard people talk about it. I've seen video and pictures, and it's not, they'll actually call, say, a spirit that might interact or whatever with a human being intelligent, versus residual would be, it's literally at the same time every day. It's almost like a movie on a loop. And sometimes people will see it, and the person will be walking, say, through a wall. Always, they don't look, they literally don't even know it's there. It's literally like you're watching a movie clip.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing you didn't run into anything like that in your research, because, like you said, you screened them.
Well, no, I didn't just screen them. I made sure they had a real internal experience
I used the wrong word.
that
Sorry. I
really
you you
that
lit
had
you
an outer experience later. And if
Mhm.
that was the case, then I had no trouble with taking them on. And I as far as like Michelle's question, you
Do you mind
decide
if I read it?
hypnotherapy.
Do you mind if I
Sure.
read it, Dr. Fred? Just because there's a lot of people listening. Dr. Fred, how did you decide hypnotherapy was the right fit for you and your work? Thank you for letting me read it.
Okay. Um, Well, the interesting thing is it's how you look at hypnosis. There's people out there that are not good hypnotists, and then there's people out there that are good hypnotists. And one of the trainers I had was a lay hypnotist in San Diego area, and when I went there, he was trying to give us a hand clasp exercise where you can't open your hands, and I went like this. And
Hmm.
he just shook his head and he said, I have 30 witnesses here. If you close your eyes and listen to what I say and you can open your hands, I'll give you $1 million.
Did he say
And I
that?
closed my eyes and I listened to what he said and I couldn't open my hands.
Hmm.
And then I opened my eyes and I looked at him and he said to me these words, now you're in control. I'm
That's
in control, not him, me,
hmm
because it was about me.
that's profound.
And it is that's the key for the question that was just asked is whether or not the power is for the individual or the power is for the hypnotist. If the power is for the hypnotist, he or she is not accomplishing anything. They're just pushing their issues, and that's not going to work. But the other side of it is I had a guy who opened up his hands and then I tried to talk to him a little bit about what to do. And he said, no, you can't hypnotize me. And I said, that's okay. It'll still be $100, but that's okay.
Michelle then said, cool. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. And I appreciate you sharing that because, again, ethics too, right? And I, especially with hypnosis, I know you're not, it's not your whole practice, but with hypnosis, I love that you just use that example there. That is,
Yeah, I
again,
don't see a lot of people with hypnosis. I see a handful during maybe 2 or 3 a month, and
mhm,
that's it. Most of them are psych people.
mhm. It can there's other questions I wish I could have asked you, but I know with being on YouTube I can't because looking even into as much as supernatural, well, I guess it could be supernatural. Well, maybe I'll ask you this. Because I've been seeing that some of the research has been showing, you have to be careful with what I say here, microdoses of things that LSD and things like that in a clinical setting and the amount of
All
therapy.
the people that I've worked with have not been on drugs.
Mhm. Well, I didn't mean they'd been on drugs. That's not what I was gonna say. But there are, and I didn't say you were doing this, I just wanted to know your thoughts of it, that they're utilizing things like that, or you see, I know it's not psychologists doing this, but say ayahuasca and people having profound spiritual or life-changing experiences.
That was
And it
one of
can
the things that I used as an example to eliminate people. Were they on drugs or were they on alcohol when they had this experience?
oh, and I would believe I could see why you would. Right? Especially if it's a research project. Absolutely. Oh my gosh, this goes by so quick, you guys. We are just about out of time. Can you tell people where to get a hold? I did list your website, but like you mentioned already about your books, but for anybody tuning in or say they want to contact you more and ask you a little bit more about your work, how can they get a hold of you?
Um, okay, so my books, you can get them on Amazon or any bookstore that you can order them on. And that would be my first book is Perceptual Hypnosis. And my second book, that was published in 2017. And my second book that just came out is Developing Your Supernatural Awareness.
Absolutely. So you guys know where to get
And
it.
so you can email me at drfwoodard at hushmail.com, or you can call my office 603-673-2582.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming
And
on tonight.
I have a web page. It's Woodard Hypnosis and Psychotherapy.org.
Awesome. I'm so glad. I want to thank you for coming on tonight. I want to thank the people that popped in, popped out on TikTok as well as on Instagram. TikTok, I am working on a streaming key. Also, Rumble. I almost forgot because we didn't see any comments, but we are watching or we are streaming to Rumble. Apparently it's working, so we'll be streaming from there from now on. We'll be able to see your comments. Gwen, I saw you and I forgot to say hello. Thank you. She just said, great show. Everybody's saying, loving the show. They're starting to type in here already. So thank you so much for coming
Well,
back on.
thank you for having me.
I want to also let everybody know if you ever want to get a hold of me, I do psychic readings, I do mediumship, I also work with you with your Akashic records, crystal Reiki, I do teaching and mentoring. You can get a hold of me right now at facebook.com/the Angel Rock. As you guys know, I've been saying it, I am working on my first course that I'm going to be teaching in the new year, and I'm hoping to put everything under a domain name, including the whole little classroom, chat room, the whole bit. It's not just going to be a 1-day course. It's probably going to be one time a week for, I think, probably a couple months away. It's looking. Also, going to try and throw the resin and stuff that I make in there too. So you guys don't forget, I wrote this down so I don't forget. I know who they are very well, but I could not I think it's a Light Gate with Dolly Saffron and Preston Dennett coming up next. I finally found out who's after me now. Isn't that awful? You know, when we produce our own shows, we don't get to meet everybody. Also, don't forget, you guys, UPRN Halloween show, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time this Thursday, October 31st, right here on UPRN. It's going to be during the Thing at the Foot of the Bed with David Hansel and myself hosting it. I got to put the invitations out, but we're going to be inviting different hosts to pop in if they would like. And we'd love to have you there. If you guys got some ideas that you guys want to do, don't hesitate to let David and I know. You can get a hold of me on any social media platform whatsoever. It'll be under the Angel Rock or Lorilei Potvin. I want to thank you all so much. I want to thank you as well again, Dr. Fred, and everybody in the chat. And yeah, we'll see you Thursday. Come all dressed up. Okay. Much love and light, everybody. Stay spooky.